For most car guys, the call of the open road is undeniable. You and your machine, and the world laid out in front of you, waiting to say hello. And there's no better way to see the United States of America. I've always wanted to take a road trip across the country, and this year, I finally did it. For 3 weeks in the months of May and June, I struck out across the country in the GTO. In this episode, the next leg of my journey begins, and I get to see what the real Texas looks like as I leave Austin and make the long drive across Texas to the state of New Mexico. My name is Josh Harrell. I host Josh's Car Corner, and this is my road trip. Well, I'm just driving out of Austin right now, and it's Sunday. There's one more day of the V8 Supercar races to go, but I've just gotten baked in the sun the last 2 days, and I've kind of had enough of it, and I really don't think that anyone else is going to win besides Lowndes and Wincup because they're just so dominant in the field. I'm kind of sad to go because I made so many new friends here and met so many cool people, and I kind of don't want to leave because of that, but at the same time, there's a lot of miles to go. It's about 600 miles to Ruidoso, where I'm going to meet up with a couple of cousins of my dad, and my sister is going to come up and I'll see her for a little bit, so I'm looking forward to that part of it now. So for now, it's just get out of Texas and get to New Mexico and start the next chapter of the trip. Alright, I am on now Highway 29 in West Texas, and it's actually a really nice highway. It's quiet, it's 4-lane, but it isn't just cut across the land in a straight line. It rises and falls and it curves and it follows the land, so this has got to be one of those roads that was built back in the days before the interstate system, where it was easier to build the road to follow the land than it was to cut through the land and make straight line roads. And I'm actually really it's actually not a bad road. I hope the whole drive across Texas is like this and I can stay off the interstates. The GPS says I'm going to end up taking for the majority of this time this Texas Highway 380, which if it's like this, that's wonderful. The scenery is now changing around here. I mean, in Austin, you had trees and everything was growing and there was a lot of green. Out here, it's a lot harder living for the trees. I mean, there's a lot of dead trees. I mean, there's a hillside right here that I'm driving right by, and it's got half dead trees, half live trees, and they don't grow very tall, and there must be some pretty tough trees out here in order to survive, because I can't imagine there's a lot of water, and as hot as it is right now. They did say it is higher than average temperatures right now. I'm sure it'll just keep changing the farther west I go. Okay, I was just in Lono, Texas. It's spelled L-L-A-N-O, so I think I'm saying that right. I don't think they say it Llano like the Spanish saying. I stopped in there and got gas. I was sitting there filling up, and this guy and a woman pulling in this beat-up old truck, and the guy says to me, "What year is that car?" I said, "It's 06. He's like, "That's one of the meanest, baddest cars around, and nobody knows what it is." And I agreed with him, and we talked about it, and I talked about how he was just down at the races, and there were a ton of them down there, and he didn't know it was from Australia. I told him about that, so he learned something there, and I thought it was just a really nice thing. And I only had to pay $3.70 for premium fuel, so it only cost $55 to fill up, which is nice. Another thing too, I'm on a 2-lane blacktop right now, and the speed limit is 70. I've never seen that before. I mean, I knew there were some fast speed limits out here, but 70 on a 2-lane, that's just heaven to me. I'm going 72 right now, and there's hardly any cars on the road, so I figure I'm going to have this road to myself for pretty much the entire day. I am having a great time. I mean, I thought it was going to be a pretty boring drive across Texas because it's just hundreds and hundreds of miles of open ground, but because I'm on these 2-lane highways with this super high speed limit and there's not really any cars, I mean, this is a blast. I mean, you get coming up and down some of these hills and through these twists and turns, and it's like going on a weekend cruise, which it kind of is because it's Sunday, but this is a blast. I'm having a pretty good time right now. So And I have a feeling this is going to continue all the way across Texas because I'm just supposed to stay on these U.S. highways. I'm never going to touch an interstate, so this should be a pretty good day. So it's been fun so far, and I think it'll continue to be fun. Although I must say, I am glad I got gas in Lono because I have not seen a town or a gas station since I left, and that was an hour ago. And I only had 50 miles left on range, so it's a good thing I did, or I could be stranded right now. So hopefully I run into some civilization again before I hit New Mexico, but we will see. Okay, I just drove by into Eden, Texas. Now, about a half hour ago, I was in Brady, Texas, and Brady claimed to be the heart of Texas. Well, Eden claims to be the center of Texas. Now, I don't really know what the difference is. I would imagine the heart and the center are the same thing, but I've been driving for 3 hours since I left Austin, and I'm only now in the center of Texas. I'm starting to wonder if I'm ever going to get out of this state. It is so huge. And I mean, and I'm not traveling slowly. Like I said, these 2-lane roads, I'm going 72 miles an hour everywhere. And I've only got to the center of Texas. So this is kind of amazing to me. And I just saw the first policeman I've seen in 3 hours. I mean, you get out in these open prairie spaces and there's just nothing. Absolutely nothing but just dried up, parched prairie land. And I mean, I suppose I thought I was going to see that, but until you see it, and then you just spend so much time and so much distance in it, and it just doesn't end. It's kind of amazing. So I'm 35 miles from my next road, which is Texas 306 Loop North, FM 1223. I don't know what these FMs are. I'm not sure what that means. If it means something, there are some roads that you see a sign and it says farm road, and maybe that's what that means. But I don't know what a farm road is. I don't know what that means. Now I'm getting on a pretty wide open 4-lane with a median here, but the speed limit's still 70, so set the cruise and just keep on trucking. Alright, trip update. It is just a little after 1:30. I passed through San Angelo about a half hour ago. I am about 20 miles outside of Sterling City and about 63 miles out of Big Spring. Still road is 70 miles an hour, still 4 lanes, still pretty quiet. I just got passed by 3 cars, and that's the first cars I've seen in probably about 15 minutes. One thing I noticed out here that's kind of interesting is that all dotted around the landscape, and like every 20 miles or so, you'll see a little building, and there'll be a sign that says post office, pointing at it. And the post offices are like no bigger than like double wide trailers, and you only see them every 20 miles. I've come back into a section with more of these trees in it now, and I'm starting to get back into where there's some hills again, and I know at some point it's going to start to get mountainous. I don't know when that's going to happen, but at some point I know, because the Rocky Mountain Range does go all the way to El Paso. That's where it ends, actually, is the Rocky Mountain Range. Terminates at El Paso, and that's why El Paso is called what it is, because in Spanish we're the pass, and there's a pass in between where the Rocky Mountains end and there's a Mexican mountain range, and I don't know what it's called, that starts up on the other side, and right down the middle of it, where those mountain ranges both end, is El Paso. So at some point, I am going to start getting into some hilly territory. Then once I get into New Mexico, I'll start getting into more mountainous territory. I know that's coming at some point, but I haven't seen it yet. Okay, I'm driving along, and I just saw something that I wasn't sure I was going to see in Texas, a wind farm. There's actually 2 wind farms. Another one just coming up here, but a pretty big one. Because they're so obsessed with oil and gas out here, I would have thought, well, they're never going to build a wind farm. They hate all that alternative energy and that solar and wind stuff. But no, I am wrong. They have wind farms, and in a perfect place. So we're down in this valley now between all these rocky escarpments. And they got the wind farms up on top of the hills, and I can just imagine the wind rushing up the hills across this valley, because I can feel it blowing the car around right now, because it's not a particularly windy over here. Not as windy as it was going to be in Austin today, but it's still a bit blowy. and I can tell that and I can feel it moving the car around, and my fuel economy is telling the tale too, because I'm down about 2 miles per gallon. So that's a really good idea. I'm glad to see that. I'm glad to see that there are some forward thinkers in Texas, and not to say that there aren't, but you hear so many things up north about what goes on down here, and I know it's not all true, and part of the reason I wanted to come down here was to debunk some of that. So I'm glad to see that. That's pretty cool. Okay, I have stopped in Big Springs, Texas. I needed a pit stop, and I've decided it is finally time to get the car a wash. One thing I noticed driving today is that the speed limits are pretty much obeyed in this state, and I think I know why. Because if you give somebody a reasonable speed limit out on the highway of 70 miles an hour, chances are they're going to respect it. And they're going to means when you have speed limits in towns where you want people to go the speed limit, they're going to respect them more, because you're not joking people, you're not kidding them around, and you're not giving them ridiculous speed limits to obey, like we have in Wisconsin, where all the interstates are 65 and all the 2-lane highways are 55 or 45, and everybody drives 73 there because they know the speed limits are a joke, and they're going to drive as fast as they want. So if you give people logical speed limits to maintain, they will maintain them, and they'll respect the other speed limits that you want them to pay attention to. So something for the state of Wisconsin to think about, I think. We need to bump our speed limits up to things that people can take seriously, because 65 everywhere, especially on our interstates and big 4-lane highways, is kind of a joke. Something else I noticed driving around is that I've kept crossing places where there were these signs that said there were draws, and I didn't know what draws were, and I got to thinking about it. I think what it is every time it rains, you've got these crevices that fit where all the water funnels to and then flows downstream. But they're not rivers or creeks, because probably 90% of the year they're dry. So when it does rain, they fill up, and that's what draws are. And I had never seen those before, so that was interesting. And that wind farm, I was driving in that wind farm probably for 45 minutes. So, I take back everything I ever said about Texas being backwards. Texas, if they're doing things like that, is a progressive state. That is progress, and that is so cool to see, because it's taking advantage of something you've got that you wouldn't ordinarily be using. And it's so weird. I was kind of like driving right down the energy highway, because there was one spot where there was a mile stretch there where there was oil rigs, hydrofracking, and wind farms all in one place. Now, I'm not too big on the hydrofracking thing because of the chemicals, but it was just kind of crazy to see all that happening in the same place at the same time. So, very cool. Energy belt. Another thing I gotta say, West Texas is definitely different to Eastern Texas, especially the Dallas area. Dallas area is has such an unwelcoming feel to it. Around here, it's much more, I don't know, it's much more smaller town feeling. It's much more welcoming. I mean, granted, it's hot as hell. And Big Springs is the biggest town I've come across since Lana, and Lana was only a couple thousand. Big Spring is 25,000, and I've been driving since I started, I've been driving 5 hours, more than 5 hours, but it was 3 hours since I was in Lana. 3 hours between a town of 2,000 and a town of 25,000. That's just so much open land out here. I can't believe how long it takes to get across this state. I still don't know if I'm going to get across it today. I think I am. The GPS tells me I am, but at the rate I'm going and what I'm seeing out the window, I don't know. So, well, I think this guy is just getting done with his wash, so time for me to punch the old code in. going good, but then after I pulled out of the car wash and got up to speed, I started hearing a rattle coming from the back of the car, and I can't figure out what it is. When I left town, it was pretty loud, and it's gotten quieter since I've set off, but it increases in frequency the faster I go, so I almost makes you think it's got something to do with rotating component. But I checked the wheel and the tire in the back, and they're fine, and the the rotor's fine. It's not touching the dust shield or anything. The exhaust isn't rubbing on the drive shaft that I can see, and it's still mounted in place, and there's nothing back there. There's no like stray anything that's gotten into a rotating component, so I don't know what is making the noise, but I can still hear it right now, and I have no idea what it is. I just hope it's not something mechanical. It doesn't look like it is, because there's nothing that appears to be wrong with any of the mechanical components, but something is rattling back there. I don't know if it's just the exhaust shield that's come loose or what. I don't know why that would increase the frequency with speed, but I don't know. Okay, so update on the Rattle. I was just driving 20 miles to 70 miles an hour, and it was making a very particular noise, and then I stopped and I turned onto another road and got up to 70 again, and now it's making a completely different noise. So I can't nail down what this is and what the noises it's making, and it's one of those things that it makes you start to question everything, because I mean, I'm out here in the middle of western Texas, and there is absolutely nothing around. I mean, I'm on a road and there's people driving on the road, but how far would I be from a service station if I needed to get to one? How far away would parts be if I needed to get them? How much would it cost me? All these things start running through your head, and then you start to question, why'd you go on a road trip in the first place? Why did you come all the way out here? I guess if I think about it logically, it probably isn't something that's going to result in a catastrophic failure, but at the same time, it's a noise, and it's there, and it's not supposed to be there, and I don't know what it is, and I'm just wondering, will I make it to Ruidoso so I can get somewhere where if nothing else, I'm going to be fine. I'll be with people, and from there I can get repairs done if necessary. Because right now, I would have really no hope of doing that. If something were to blow up in the back end right now, I'd be screwed. If that did happen, I mean, I'm sure someone would stop and help, and I'm sure eventually I'd get the car to somewhere where it could be fixed, and I'm sure eventually it could be fixed, but it would probably take so much time and cost so much money that as soon as it was fixed, the first thing I'd have to do is drive right back home, because then that would be the end of the trip. And I don't want it to be the end of the trip. I want to keep going. So I'm hoping that whatever this is, it's just an annoyance more than a catastrophic thing. I mean, it's already gotten quiet again, so I don't think whatever it is, it's something mechanical that's going to just break. Well, I had just crossed into New Mexico. They didn't even have a welcome sign. I saw the welcome sign for Texas to go the other way. There was no fanfare. It just said, "Welcome to Energy Count Plus, Lee County, New Mexico." That was the only sign. So anyway, I'm still on a 2-lane blacktop. It's a lot smoother than the one that was just in Texas. So, but I'm still going. The Rattle's still there. I guess at this point I'm convinced it's like a exhaust shield or something. I don't think it's a rotating part, because if it were a rotating part and it were breaking down, the noise would be getting louder, and I would be hearing worse noises or smelling something by now, and I'm not getting any of that. So I'm convinced whatever it is, it's not a permanent thing. It's just annoying at this point. So I will have to stop in. I'll have to take the car apart tomorrow, or take it somewhere and figure out what's wrong and get it fixed, because I don't want to put up with that for another 6,000 miles. So that's the situation. Okay, so situation report. I just filled up for gas at a little town in New Mexico, and I'm making the final stretch through to Ruidoso now. I didn't realize that this whole time I had been climbing an elevation. I just checked the elevation thing on my GPS, and I'm at 4,040 feet and climbing. The weather has cooled down quite a bit. I would say it's probably 80 degrees, maybe high 70s right now with a breeze, and there's no humidity in the air. It's very dry. The landscape is just nothing but dry desert plains now, no fields anymore, no crops. It's just wide open space. So it's a whole new vista all over again. And according to the GPS, I'm going to get into where I'm going at about 6:45, but that's with a time change. I would think that would be an hour 10 from now, but at some point here I'm going to switch over to mountain time, so it's actually another 2 hours 10 minutes that I will be driving. Apparently I'm going to drive through Roswell, so I might have to stop and take some pictures there, because I'll probably never be that way again, and I'm sure there's some pretty funky alien stuff in Roswell. So yeah, just going to keep on driving. Okay, update. I must be just outside of Roswell. I must be getting close. I have been on this road now for an hour, and the terrain just keeps getting more and more wonderful. This road has just been utterly straight for 20 miles, and it's finally going to make just a slight little bend to the left here. I've been able to see it. I've been taking camera shots of it. I've been going down the road, and you can see it 5-6 miles down the road because it's just arrow straight. It's bumpy as all get out. They are repaving it, but it is a amazing straight road. I thought I'd see roads like this in Arizona and the desert, maybe Nevada, but I never thought I'd see them in New Mexico. I thought I'd be in the mountains with more twists and turns, but it's just been arrow straight flat roads. Anyway, the rattle continues. I'm just drowning it out at this point. I don't think the car's going to break down. I'll make it to Ruidoso, and hopefully it's not too expensive to fix whatever it is tomorrow. Well, the climb has started. I just passed 5,000 feet. So, was down at like 3,800 feet, and all of a sudden just started going up really quick. So, now at 5,000, actually up to 5,060 now, still climbing like mad. On my way up to whatever the altitude's going to be at Ruidoso. My ears are popping. They popped a couple of times here. And the terrain is just getting more hilly, more rocky, more varied. And that mountain that I've been snapping photos of is getting closer and closer, although I don't think I'm going to it. I think I'm just going to pass by it. And if I'm at 5,100 feet, that's got to be well over 8,000. That's got to be up there. So, but the mountains around here and the hills are beautiful. I mean, they're not really mountains, they're just rolling high plains hills, but they're just beautiful. This is just such a cool part of the country. I'm so glad I'm driving through here right now, because this is something to see. It's just so different to anything that I've ever seen. This is something else. I can't even, you just come around the corner, all of a sudden you're presented with this beautiful rolling hills in front of you, and the sun's setting on them, and half of them have got sun on them and half of them don't. Oh my gosh. Wow. Just wow. This is what you don't see flying over in a plane at 35,000 feet. You don't see the elevation changes. You don't see the slopes and the curves and everything. It's just, oh man. This is the only way to see the country. Flying places is not the way to do it. Wow, look at that hill right next to me. Wow. That is steep. Wow, what a place to live. What a place to live. This is awesome. I need both hands for this section. This is a fantastic bit of road. And the sun's still overhead. This is just getting better and better. What a fantastic way to end the day. Considering how the halfway point got with a friggin' rattle, this is a fantastic way to end the day.